There we go. Awesome. All right. So, everybody, this is episode 1 of the vlog for Selling the Stateline. And my special guest today is George Pleshkewych. He's not only one of my closest friends in Northern Illinois, but he's also an amazing mortgage dad. So, George, introduce yourself. Tell us what you do, how long you've been doing it, and let's go into the reason why we're here.
Sure. I am George Pleshkewych, also known as the Mortgage DAD. I have been doing mortgages for around 17 years now. So for the longest time, I've been, with a big bank or fiduciary. So with 14 years with Chase, followed by 2.5 with First Community Credit Union. And now, most recently, I'm excited to be part of the Planet Home Lending team. So
awesome.
I am now joining forces with Bruce Biggers here in town and looking forward to being able to just help more people. That's one of the things that I love about where I'm at now is that I can really do pretty much any kind of mortgage, where I was really focused on only conventional loans with the credit union and lots of overlays with Chase. So now I'm in a world with no overlays, all products, the experience, and ready to get out there and help anybody. So that's a little commercial about me.
That sounds like an awesome opportunity there. I've done a lot of work with Planet Home Lending. So they do have some amazing products. But I mean, you and I, I'm a realtor, you're a mortgage originator. We could talk about mortgages and interest rates and all that all day. But the reason I wanted to have you here for the first episode of this vlog that I'm doing here on our YouTube channel, Selling the Stateline, is you just took a trip over Easter weekend to Poland. And I want to know, I know you love helping people. And I know Poland had a special place for you this time around because your family is from Ukraine. And we all know, not to be political or anything, but we all know there's a travesty going on over there right now. And there's a lot of people that have been displaced. I know it hit you personally. So I want you to tell me your story and why you and your dad decided to make that trip and then what you guys did there.
Sure. So we'll start with a little background. So I am Ukrainian, 100%. Both of my grandparents came from Ukraine, and they came, all 4 of my grandparents came over during World War II. My mom was born in the States. My dad was actually born in like a German encampment, some kind of like similar to like a concentration camp in Munich, en route to the States. And they started a life here, but the majority of my family is still in Ukraine until recent. So as I'm sure everybody knows, the war started back on February 26th, 7th is a Thursday night. I'll never forget it it was Wednesday night, because we were actually at Firehouse and having a big in-depth conversation. And I came into the first bombings and came home that night after that dinner out to the first bombings taking place, and really being glued to the TV for the better part of 10 days to 2 weeks. So it was on February 27th that I started finally making contact with some of my family on a consistent basis through Facebook Messenger. Found out that my cousin and my uncle and my other cousin and their kids all were able to make it across the border to Poland. And they've resettled in Rzeszów, is the way to pronounce it. Rzeszów. In Ukrainian, it would be more like Sasu, but that's the Polish way to say it. And it's just across the border. It's about an hour, 15 minutes from Ukraine's border to get to the city. And it's really one of the biggest places where a lot of the refugees started to come into first. The Medica is the actual city where the crossing is, but they made it into Rzeszów. So they started with nothing. I mean, they didn't have car. They didn't have, they had a little 1-bedroom, 1.5-bedroom kind of apartment that was a friend of theirs that let them stay there temporarily. to get things together. And they had to cross by foot. It's actually a really interesting story, but my uncle came over. He's got Parkinson's, so he's in a wheelchair. They had to they drove as far as they could with their car. The taxi, from my understanding, is now that I was there, I got the full story. The taxi, they dropped him off as close as they could, and then they crossed by foot with wheelchair and all. And
Wow.
when they did it, there was nothing in Medica. So Medica was just the crossing point, and then you were kind of on your own. So they made it to Sheshu, that hour and a 15-minute drive, got settled, and basically started with nothing. I personally went around to family, friends, got incredible. I think we had over 40 separate donors that contributed to help my family specifically, and I was able to get money wired over to them. They were able to start a Polish checking account and really got them on their feet to start a new life in Poland. My cousin's husband can't leave. They're not allowing anybody that's 15, I think it's 18 to 65 to leave the country. So he's still in Ukraine fighting.
I was going to ask that because a lot of the men, not part of the military, they're just guys like you and me, we're young enough to fight for our country, and that's what they're being asked to do. They're being said, you got to stay, here's a gun, quick training, and they're there now trying to fight off the Russian invasion and protect their home. So I can imagine how devastating that is for their wives, for their children, and for their parents who might have crossed over and they're in a foreign country now to them, just hoping for the best. So our thoughts and prayers go out to all of the families that are dealing with this right now. But I want to ask you, while you were there with your dad, I saw a lot of your Facebook posts and they were just motivational, and there was people from all over the world coming to this area of Poland. They're helping. What kind of support were you seeing in Europe? Because we get a slightly skewed media in the United States. Sure. So depending, no matter what.
That's the biggest thing that I learned. What we see, or at least, I watch the news pretty much daily since this conflict or war began. And the news that we get is it's just images of the war itself, the bloodshed, the tactical, what's happening, the amount of refugees are being reported on. But what's not being reported on is what I discovered while I was there. So going back to when I made this decision, and why, when I was able to get money over to them to help, and they got situated in Shesho, and I knew that this isn't going to go away anytime soon, that this was a full war and this was going to be here for a while, I knew that I had to go. So I made plans, booked flights, got everything in order to make this trip. And we went out there, and I went out there, A, to see my family, obviously, but B, the main thing that I wanted to do was see really what was happening on the ground level, at the border, on the ground level, and into the country. I had invitations to go into the country from my cousin and other family members. They wanted to come take me from the border to go see them in Lviv, which is where most of my family is. So it's Lviv is about an hour and a half into the country, and they wanted me to come, but I was very reluctant. I was nervous. It's dangerous, and I have no war experience. I'm not fleet of foot or anything along that line that would. I didn't think it was a smart idea, so I didn't go in, but I wanted to go and learn as much as I can, talk to as many people as I can, find out the grassroots what's happening and what I can do from back home to help these people. So what I learned is what I wish was reported on is just the unbelievable outpouring of help that's there. I can go on for days about the stories of who I met, how many people I met, all the volunteers. So we got there. Let's kind of rewind, and I'll kind of tell you a little bit about the trip and what it was like and how I got to the grassroots and found the answers that I was looking for. So we flew in on Thursday, got in Friday because it was an overnight flight. Went to my uncle's to surprise him. He didn't know we were coming. So that in itself was an amazing moment. My dad and my uncle both cried because he hadn't seen him. I haven't seen my uncle in 30 years because he's got Parkinson's. He can't travel. And literally, so Ukraine, not many people know this, Ukraine's different from Poland or other countries in the EU where we can travel to and from Poland. People, citizens of Poland can come here very easily. Whereas in Ukraine, you have to get permission and you have to get a non-immigration, like a visitor visa. And it's not easy. It takes time, and it's not as easy as us just being able to jump over. So seeing my family on a regular basis is not simple. It takes some time. It takes some planning. It takes getting through to the right people in the government to get the permission.
Is it hard? I don't mean to interrupt, but is it hard then also for a U.S. citizen to get access into Ukraine, like vice versa?
No, because
I do know Polish citizens are really easy to come to America. If you're from England or Ireland or Sweden, you could come over to America very easily, or vice versa.
It's very difficult for Ukrainians to come.
Okay.
It's easier for us to go to Ukraine before the war. Right now we can't, but I mean we can, but we can't. You have to go to Poland first and then cross, but you can't just the skies are closed. So
there's no direct flight going in.
Yeah, going into Ukraine before the war was easy as a U.S. citizen because the Ukrainian government, no problem. Visa, they'll give visas, no problem. It's the other way around that is difficult, treacherous. It's more of and even now as refugees, I'm researching right now that I'm back, how to get my cousins to come visit. Not even they're okay where they're at in Shashu, and they have no intentions of relocating at this moment to become citizens or come to the States. But I want them to come visit. I mean, I would love to put them up for a couple of weeks, come visit, get away from that. And everything I've found right now says though it's going to be a solid 150 to 180 days wait just to get an interview.
Right. Well, I do know from an NPR article that happened on the radio last week I listened to, that a lot of people from the Ukraine are flying to Tijuana, Mexico. And there's a big camp there right now. American citizens, Ukrainians from California are coming down into Mexico and helping 50 people a day. They're able to get before somebody for an interview. But it's been ridiculous. I know they need food and water and shelter, and it's just been really hard to get them through as refugees, and they can only get 50 a day across the border. But that's one point I know that they were getting people into the US to just be able to get away. So continue your story. I'm sorry to cut you off with that. It was just
it's all so
it's a conversation.
I'm sorry. We landed Friday afternoon, saw my uncle, surprised him, had a little. I got to see my cousin Mariana, who I've seen several times. She's come because she's a pianist. She's a world-known pianist, so she tours the world and plays. She played for the Polish president, the Ukrainian president in the past. All this, she's amazing. So I've seen her several times. But my other cousin Yulia, I've never met. She's 37. I'm 39. When we were kids, we used to write to each other. So like I would write her a letter in the old snail mail. When somebody from here would go to there, they would deliver the mail. Same thing coming back, and we see pictures of each other. Back then, there was no FaceTime. There was no easy way. Now there is, and we communicate more, but we never met. So this is the first time I met Yulia, and it was pretty awesome. So we get there, we surprised them. We came back to the hotel, and we decided to just eat at the hotel restaurant because we were tired. I mean, flying all day, and we didn't really, it was raining, so we didn't really want to go explore the city of Shashow just yet. So we went to the hotel restaurant, sat down, and our waitress, Dorothy, Dorota is her name, but Dorothy translated, she was phenomenal. She's telling us stories like, I guess we picked the right hotel to stay at. All the dignitaries were there. Lincoln, what's his name? Blinken. Anthony Blinken stayed there. Anderson Cooper stayed there. All the different media outlets. That's the hotel that they kind of made as their home base. Stayed there, and so we had dinner. We ate. The whole family was reunited at that point. Even the family that lived in Poland, that was on, I think it was my dad's side or my mom's. No, it was definitely my dad's side. And then there's more family that the refugees that immigrated in. We all had like a big family reunion that first night. It was great. And we ended dinner, and the waitress is like, you need to go upstairs. Like because I told her my story, like I was here to obviously see the family, and she could tell it was a big reunion. There was like 15 of us sitting at dinner, but she's like, if you're looking to get to meet some people, go upstairs. And that's where the bar was. So after we ate, we all went upstairs, and kid you not, there was probably 15 volunteers sitting up there, just chatting with each other, hanging out, kind of unwinding. And it wasn't like didn't know what to expect, because I've never been in a war zone like this. I've never been in a hotel like this. And it was, I figured it would be just a bunch of people drinking at the bar, but pretty much everybody, yeah, they were drinking, having a beer or whatnot, but they weren't there to socialize to the point where they're just out drinking to get drunk or whatever, have a good time. They were unwinding, kind of just chatting about their day, what they were doing. They were all regulars. I came to find out. So we were there for 3 nights, and every night the same 15, 20 people, and then give or take a few more, depending on who was coming through, were the same ones that were there. They were there on assignment, whether it was contracted by the government, the US government, whether it was other contractors, volunteers that were with different NGOs that were there staged. It was awesome. So first night, I just kind of started chatting with random people, got to know a few people that were working on air defense and drone defense.
Oh,
really weird, like really cool to hear some of these things and the intricacies. And right now, that most of those people, the contractors, were there to defend NATO. So they weren't involved in the conflict. They weren't following what's happening in Ukraine. Their jobs were there to make sure that if ever it came to Poland, that Poland's ready and prepared.
right.
And
one Poland is a NATO
country,
country, which is one of the red flags that started a lot of this war.
Yep.
Was Ukraine. Ukraine was trying to say, we would love to one day be a member of NATO, and that caused a little bit of some of the conflict, from what I understand. Like, I know Russia's been taking land since the 2 administrations ago for our government. I know they annexed, what was the town, the area?
Crimea and parts of the Donbass region. Yeah, that's right. And that pretty much has been in conflict since 2014 when that happened under Obama was president at the time. And yeah, and now that wasn't enough. So now they went for the whole country. But yeah, so a lot of these contractors were there, the contracted people, the people that work for the government, the people that were there per diem, like as a job on a daily basis, were there for NATO specific, not for, they weren't going into Ukraine. They were basically going up and down Poland, making sure the borders were secure and that the anti-defense, all that was working. And then that first night I also met, so I got to be careful because I can't say too much because it was funny. I mean, I was sitting there, and we're talking about like 2, 3 in the morning. we're still sitting there at the bar having these conversations, these guys. But one was the way it was described to me, because he didn't want to get too, he was very elusive with his words and was very conscious about phones, like wouldn't let me take a picture, didn't want a selfie with me, nothing, like
Right.
didn't want any of his information divulged. And so he basically was a cross between an arms dealer and a wet what do they call it? Wet something, wet worker. So wet worker, after Googling, after I went to the bathroom, is apparently somebody that has a mission to take somebody out, whether it's assassination or whatever. And from my understanding of my conversation with him, he was there to help take out some of these Russian top generals, et cetera. And at the same time, he was also pretty heavily involved in getting some of these helicopters that the Ukraine's been asking for, getting it into them. But there's a big network. There's a big, and this is where I have to be careful what I say. No country wants to be the country that's giving the weapons.
No. So there's a third party. There's always a third party person that moves things around.
Yeah. And I learned a lot on that part of things, and how the Congo's involved and all these other countries, and it's crazy. But so I got to meet this guy, and he was pretty scary to say the least, because
I would bet.
not every day you meet somebody like that. But at the same time, he was very I almost didn't want to believe what I was hearing at first, but when apparently he's been around. He was only there the one night out of the three, because the next day he supposedly went to Kiev and was going back in the country, Kiev and Bucha, and these other harder hit areas. He had to deliver some stuff. And the next morning I saw him getting in the elevator with me, and he's got it's just surreal to get in the elevator and dude's holding bulletproof vest in one hand, with an army one,
right,
all ready to go. And then in the other bag, he's got a bag filled with, I forget the name of the chocolate bar, but it was like milk bar, I think is what they call it. And it was just like rows of chocolate bars that apparently that's what everybody really wishes they can get, and they're in the country. So he bought bags of these chocolate bars, and he's got his bulletproof vest, and he went up to change in the room, and he was heading out to Kiev and in these areas and making his round into the country. I was just blown away by it. So I knew there was legitimacy there. And then at one point during that conversation, that first night, I got him together with one of the, I don't know what his title was, but I would call him the leader of some of these contractors, kind of like a general would be, where he was in charge of all the contractors. And the dude was super nice, super friendly, but it reminded me of it felt like I was in a TV show like The MASH or something, where you got this kind of leader dude that's a little quirky, but he knew his stuff. He's been he was in war or in the army for 20, or involved in the army of some kind for 27 years. The guy knew his stuff inside and out, and I got them together. And so I kind of got a really true story of what this guy was about, because he was backing up some things that the guy was saying, but also refuting some of the things that were a little outlandish seemed extreme. But I definitely, the guy was legit, and it was definitely frightening to hear these conversations with what the guy did and what his job was. And yeah, it was pretty intense. So that was kind of the first night of what I learned. Didn't really get anywhere as far as what my goal was. So the next day I made a big push with my family, and we headed to the border. Got our passports, headed to the border. I have video I took of the line of trucks. It went on for miles. You were driving, and they had 3 lanes. So the line all the way to the right was a line filled with semis of supplies and food and stuff going into the country. And they just sat there. So they were literally trucks parked for miles. smoking cigarettes, hanging out, waiting for their turn to go and move further ahead so that they can cross the border. Next to them was the line of people, the refugees that wanted to get back into the country, because this was the day before Easter, so it was a Saturday. So apparently there was a lot of heavy traffic to come back into the country from these refugees that came out just to celebrate Easter and then get back out. So they wanted to be with the family. And going into this, it's been kind of quiet. So there's a lot of there's, especially on the west side of the country, it's been quiet for probably a week to 10 days without many missiles or anything. Most of the fighting at that stage was in the Donbas region, by Mariupol and on the eastern side of the country. So that's the second line. The third line was people that weren't going to cross the border but wanted to go to Medica. And Medica is the city, I guess, where the crossing is, where the actual border is. So we went on the third line and we had to wait a return because they only had one. Eventually, they all three merged into one. And so they were only letting one line at a time go. So we had to wait a turn,
Right.
but our line was the shortest. We got there, we parked, we walked to the border, and that's where it blew me away. So it went on. I got tons of pictures, but it went on for, I would say, maybe two city blocks worth, both sides of tents. And they had a tent for everything: tent for animals, tent for food, tent for cell phone, like the calling cards, things, anything that, so when people cross, that they can get in touch with people, have a plan. People were hitchhiking. It was surreal. And I didn't realize at the time. So the first tent that I went to was World Central Kitchen, and I met the volunteers there and thanked them. I mean, at this point, I was very much emotional and into it, it was a somber site. We weren't at the border yet, but we were just kind of starting down this path, going backwards as to who was there, what help was there, and I was getting a feel for like all these people, everybody I stopped and talked to, World Central Kitchen, the tent for some other NGO, is all people from all over the world that basically just dropped everything they were doing. And they all flew to Shasho. Most of them were in Shasho, Przemysl, another city that's a little bit closer to Medica, and anywhere in between. And they were doing 12-hour shifts, so 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Every day. And then 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. they had shifts of people to staff these tents and just the help all these refugees crossing the border and make sure they were taken care of. Just humanitarian effort, and it was incredible. Never seen anything like it. I think that it really hit me hard, and obviously brings tears to your eyes when I got to I didn't realize that I wasn't supposed to go in it. But again, I don't know. I mean, I've never been in something like this, but it was a refugee tent, World Central Kitchen, with only women and children. I didn't get it. I popped in and realized, and then I popped right back out. But holy cow, man. Look to see the various different, they had heaters set up and the various families just huddled around with blankets, just trying to warm up that border itself is a couple miles long. I don't wish that upon anybody. We shouldn't need to see something like that. And it was incredible. Keep going. And then we get to like the actual border, and at the border, there's what they call a neutral territory. So neutral zone, I guess, where you're not in either country, but that's like you're in between those two countries. So we went into that area, crossed over there. They had a couple of people, volunteers that were doing chalk paint on the floor. And I took some pictures of it, but they made a hopscotch for kids with Ukrainian flags in it. And they also had
something to keep the kids occupied while they're waiting their turn to come through.
Yes. Yep. And they had a sign that said, in Ukrainian, it says "Tut bezpечно," which means it's safe here. So like as you crossed over and you're in the neutral territory coming into Poland, it's safe here, kid games, they drew and volunteers, and that's where it all started. So took pictures there with the Ukrainian flag, and I found out, so that Ukrainian flag, I don't have, it's not here with me. I have it. So apparently my cousin went 2 days before we came into the country to get us a Ukrainian flag straight from Lviv, and we took pictures at the border with it. And then that was my souvenir, I guess, if you say. So I brought it home with me. So I will find a spot for it, but it was moving. It was incredible to see. So I got the big picture of what this whole, what the humanitarian effort really was like, how big it was. And until you see these people and these poor people crossing and walking, and the animals and the kids, and it hits you hard. And it's like, why? None of this it shouldn't even be necessary. So that was a huge day. It's day 2. But then we came back to the hotel, did our usual. I went up to the bar, because apparently that's the hot spot. And I met another guy. And again, I don't want to share details like names, but I will share he's a realtor out of all things.
Realtor.
He's a realtor from Wisconsin.
Oh, wow.
The guy's not Ukrainian. I know who he is. I'm friends with him now. I have a direct contact with him. I've talked to him since I've left. He has a wife and kids. He's probably our age, regular guy like you and I, and he has military background, and he was so adamant, like, you can't, everybody living should have a choice. If they want, they should have a vote. They should be free. And what's happening here is basically tyranny or oppression and whatever, however you want to label it, but it's not free. The Ukrainian people aren't free right now. They're trying to have it ripped from them. And he was so hurt by that. He dropped it all. He dropped his career, went there, and he is part of a network of probably 100+ people that they're terming, is the term that I kept hearing is war Uber. So what a war Uber is it's people that are going in as quickly as they can, replenishing, driving in materials, coming back out, replenishing, driving it in, coming back out, and just constant back and forth. This guy, this realtor, I was able to trace back the foundation that he's working through. That foundation's now 501(c). They're out of Wisconsin. I've got links on my Facebook with the description of the group. You can go on their website now. They've really done a lot in this 6 weeks to get up and running. But what they're doing is they're raising funds and raising specific materials that are necessary in the country, deep in the country. Not like, we're not talking about going to like Lviv or where it's kind of safer. We're talking about like going into Kiev, going into Kharkiv, which was, I'm sure you remember, Kharkiv was like the main point that was bombed for days on days on days on days. And Bucha, where all the genocide is happening, and all these places, like they're literally driving into these places with generators, with tourniquets, with whatever, goggles, with band-aids, bandages, whatever is necessary at the time. And this 501(c) is trying to get agreements at a wholesale price to maximize the effort of their dollars. So they've got tourniquet wholesale agreements in place already. So now they're purchasing like 600 a week that they're sending, and they're shipping it to Poland. And then guys like this realtor, this war Uber, are taking them by the truckloads and delivering them and trying to stay clear of any harm. Well, so that night, the second night, I went back to the hotel, went to the bar, met this realtor, and he was just kind of sitting there staring off into space, drinking a beer, quiet. All the other guys, like the contracted people that weren't there for the war, the contracted people, like I said, that were there for NATO doing their job, they were on a per diem, they were hanging out at the bar doing their thing. God bless them still. But this guy was like kind of off quiet, and we sat down, my dad and I, and we talked with him and got to know him a little bit, and he started opening up, and he was just having a really shitty day. I mean, there's no other way to say it, but apparently, and he showed me texts of where, like what cities, two of his war Uber friends were killed that day. And
wow.
he said 7 now in total out of the 100 plus that were risking their lives on a daily basis are now dead. And it hits him. I mean, he's got a wife and kids, and he doesn't have any. The thing that blew me away about this realtor is he's not even Ukrainian. He has no Ukrainian history, descent, nothing. The only skin in the game he's got is that he's human. And he just feels that passionate. I mean, he did 6.5 years with the US Army, but he feels that passionate that he wanted to be a part of the solution and dropped it all. He's bought a van. He's got like 5 burner phones. He says that the Russians try so hard to like screw him up and trace him and things. So he's constantly changing out phones, SIM cards, he said. He's not using any location devices. So he's really kind of off the radar a lot of the time when he's in there. So they can't figure out where he's at because he's bringing he's going into the hardest hit areas, bringing the stuff. And he's like, they're even jamming like his credit cards, these Russians, like, so he said he had an issue with MasterCard that day, like earlier that day. Like, so not only did 2 of his friends die, but now he's trying to purchase drugs, like being kind of like a delivery person where there's doctors in the country that need antibiotics and they're out. So he's going to the pharmacy in Poland, and and they're able to, because he's delivering it specifically to some doctor, he's able to drive it across the border and do this. And then MasterCard was like fraud alerts and weren't letting him charge. And he had to use, they were just doing everything they could to stop him. It's just crazy, like all the stories that you hear. But there he is, like he's just thinks on his feet. He's quick, and he's doing God's work out there, man. And so that was the second night. That was probably my biggest, like, I finally got what I was looking for. I came there to find people like this that were really making the difference. I know that the humanitarian side's easy. I mean, it's not easy. You're still in a war zone, but you're on the right side of things. You're in Poland where it's safer. They're volunteering their time and stuff, but these are the people that are like going above and beyond that I wanted to support that person. So found the 501(c), got the group, got the organization. I'm now going to start pushing it here locally, but the goal is just it's not, we have no idea when the war is going to end. We don't know how. The more we give as Americans, and whatever money we have that we can donate to the cause to help these war Uber people that are bringing, tourniquets, medicine, generators to be able to run the drones and things that are needed where the power's out, heat. These are the people that are going to, even a truck full of these items, like the way he described it, by me getting these truckloads of things in, it's what's keeping Ukrainians fighting. They're keeping them in the game. They're keeping them, giving them hope and positivity that, okay, we can make it the next day. We can do this. We can push back the Russians, and it's just incredible. So that is my 100% what I was looking for when I went. I found it. I've got it, and now I am going to, channel all of my attention into trying to.
All right. I just pulled up on my phone your Facebook page because I want to put that in here while we're speaking, but it's donorbox.org/Wisconsin-Ukrainians. And I will have the link down in the comments right at the bottom of this video on YouTube. So you watch this, please, if you could help. This is a funny tie on how someone, George, you grew up in the Ukrainian village area of Chicago. We're in the Midwest. I'm from New York City. I grew up in Sunnyside, Queens, but my parents came from Greenpoint, Brooklyn, which is a huge Polish population. My dad's Polish and Russian. My mom's Irish. You're 100% Ukrainian. We've been, but now here we are in the Midwest, and there's this tie, and then you go there and meet a group from Wisconsin. I mean, the same distance it is from where you were in Poland to cross that border is like where we live right now to get to Madison, Wisconsin. It's just like, that's the craziness of it. It's that close. So if people here in the US start thinking of it in those terms, we are in a safe zone and Madison is under attack. It's like that's how far away this is from the people that have ran to Poland, the people that are in Poland now, why NATO is there, and every little bit we could help to continue those humanitarian efforts to get the supplies into the doctors. I mean, there's still innocent people that weren't as lucky. They can't get out of Ukraine right now. Just the stuff I'm seeing regularly, and it's sad, but at least there was that one reporter, the correspondent for Fox, that lost a couple of limbs and an eye and in an attack while he was reporting from the Russians. That actually put a spotlight back on what's going on, because it was starting to fade away in the US news. And until this war is over, I think we have to keep this top of mind. So I appreciate those efforts, George. But again, that's donorbox.org/Wisconsin-Ukrainians. That's the link, and I will be in the piece here. So George, you're with your family now, the crazy night, but now it's Easter Sunday. And I know, especially for, my Polish family, I'm sure your Ukrainian family, Easter's a big deal. So tell me how that was now, like Sunday.
So we woke up Sunday and we wanted to do something to get their minds off of what was happening. So we all took a train. Obviously my uncle can't because he's got the Parkinson's, but my cousins and all the kids, and my dad and I, my brother also joined us on this trip. I guess I haven't really talked about him, but he flew in from a different city. He's actually still there in Poland, but he's more going to see the parts of Poland where our family is from, spend some time there too. So like the mission part of the trip, we all kind of left on the same day, but we all took a train to Krakow. So it's like an hour and a half train. Is fun. We had like a little cabin or whatever, where we had our own doors and we close it. And the kids were playing on their, doodling on their little notebooks and having fun. There's this funny app that they have in Ukraine that we don't have, which blows my mind, where it take a selfie and it make it into it makes your mouth and everything move like you're singing a song. It's hysterical. And we were doing just totally disconnected, had a really good time, went to Krakow, got to see the old city, went up to the castle, had lunch in the main square, and best pierogies I had probably ever. Freaking amazing.
You sent me that picture where it was the pierogies and then there was kielbasa and then there was a beer cart. It was all right next to each other.
They had, the main square has these little huts, and each hut had a different thing. And one hut had pierogies, one hut had sausages, one hut had beer. And I was like, that's it. It was a t-shirt idea. Pierogies, kielbasa, beer. That's really all you need when you're in Poland. It's amazing. So we went, had lunch, got really our minds off of it, came back. The train was delayed an hour, so we stayed for dessert at the train station, and then we rode back and played games, and the kids were just having a blast, like totally disconnected. And I even forgot about the war for a day, and it was awesome. Came home and we were going to go back to the bar for a third night to try to do, but I felt like my job was done. I found what I was looking for, and I said, no, let's just stay at Uncle Otko at the apartment that they're kind of renting. Right. And we did, and we stayed there till 2-3 in the morning, and even the kids stayed up and just had a great Easter Sunday. There's no other way to explain it. We dropped us off at the hotel, went to bed, and then the next day we were leaving. So we all agreed that we would have one more breakfast together at the hotel, and then they would drive us to the airport, and we kind of had our head back. And then my brother picked up the rental car, and they went off back to Krakow and do some other stuff in the country. Well, I woke up, I think set the alarm for 8:30, which I was, every morning I woke up between 8:30 and 9:30, and I was tired as hell because That's like 2 a.m. back home. So it
Right.
was so hard to get used to it. But and I think even the third day I slept in till 8:30 and I still was not used to it, which is probably good because it's so much easier to get adjusted back to this time zone now that we're home. But woke up to messages from both cousins that morning, the view, which is where they're from, five rockets made it through and bombed the view. And just like that, it was all over. Everything that we had gained on Easter Sunday in Krakow, the train rides, the fun, we were having drinks at the apartment and listening to American music, some Polish music, just having a ball, eating, and it was gone. And immediately you could tell everything that we had kind of lost was right back in our face. And my cousin, they met us for breakfast. They were very down, depressed, because they hit close to their house and work. In fact, my cousin sent me a picture from one of the men that can't leave, that's working still, sent me a picture of the shell from the bomb. That's how close it was. Like they literally could go outside and pick up the bomb shell or piece of it, and trying to find it so I can show it
And
to
I
you.
think you might be able to share that on your screen if you have it. If it's on your
I
computer.
don't, well, it's on my phone. I don't have.
Okay, then you could just hold it up then.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Let's see here. So there's like the fragment.
Wow.
Yeah, so messaged it to her that morning, like literally right in there, right in front of their office, and it hit a train station, and that the view hadn't been touched in weeks,
Right.
and then boom, right back in it. So we left on a somber note because that happened, and I guess on Easter right there, the World Central Kitchen also got hit, where there was like quite a few deaths in Lviv, but I don't think the kitchen, they just had injuries. The Russians are going after these humanitarians that are risking their lives in the country now, and it sucks. It just absolutely sucks. It brought me right back to like where we started this trip, and things are far from over. So why now? Like I come home, and even coming home to a house filled with Easter baskets and chocolate and food all over makes me guilty. Like we have so many things and we have it so well here. And they don't and it's not their by choice. They had it all. When I was there, one of the first nights, my cousin FaceTimed her husband, and he gave me a tour of their house, and their house was gorgeous. I mean, they just recently remodeled it, had similar style, like the grays and the whites and everything that kind of gather here. And they as a family can't be there and enjoy it because it's being ripped away from them. It's stupid. It's absolutely ridiculous. And it's funny is they have people living there, but they're not people. They're not family. They're people that have kind of migrated west, that they've brought in and opened their home to help, because everybody's getting out of the East. So at least he's got roommates right now, but not the roommates that it should be. So it's like, and for now, it's like, what do? You can't, you either have to risk your life and live there and hope that you don't run out of food and these things and rely on these war Uber people to keep driving stuff in, or you flee. And it sucks. So that's where you're at. And I appreciate you having me on for this first episode and really documenting. My Facebook posts really go deep into some of it, but not as deep as our conversation we just had. So I'm hoping.
And I appreciate you opening up the personal stuff going on with you, your emotion. I mean, I see clearly you're emotional. I'm getting emotional talking with you about this. It's it's surreal for so many people because most of us do not understand how that feels. You you've been there and you've seen it firsthand. That's one, but you also have family living through it. And I would just say I'm grateful that you made it back safe. And we just have to count our blessings that somewhere in our family lines they decided to come here to America for this opportunity, that gave us the abilities and the liberty and the freedoms that we have right now. And that's why it's so important for us to support freedom throughout the world. When somebody's fighting for their home, we should be helping them. We're fighting against tyranny and oppression and just fascism in general. I mean, just trying to come in and just take over a country because they don't like the politics. Ukraine earned its freedom in the 90s, correct? 96, I believe. 91
Cold War.
at the end of the Cold War. So I
It's
mean,
got a deeper history though that goes deep way back. And we have our own language, our own food, our own everything. It's not. It's funny. Like I was talking to. I had an opportunity yesterday. The founder of Wisconsin Ukrainians called me just to kind of get to know me because he saw my effort, obviously, that I was
Right.
just there. And he knows that I'm passionate about trying to help him and his group because they're doing the things that are necessary right now. And so we had a nice conversation, and I was just saying, like, man, when it comes to I'm losing my train of thought. What were we talking about right before this? Sorry.
you spoke to the head guy at Wisconsin Ukrainians.
Yes. And I was telling him how it's so easy to just, or he was telling me, vice versa. It's so easy to just feel like you did something, out of it, walk away and say, like, I made a difference and be done and move on with your life.
Right.
And it's another thing to understand that it's not something that's going to end anytime soon, and we need to just
Nope.
keep it up, keep it up, and keep the spirits. Try to keep driving the help that they need, because that's the only way. And I strongly believe that Ukraine's going to end up being sovereign and its own thing at the end of this, whenever that may be. And we're going to rebuild and we're going to come back bigger and better. But if we can save lives in the process, I'm all about it. And to me, that is where we're at. I mean, we just have to keep hoping that the army does its thing and we can get there and eventually outlast and win, and Ukraine can stay sovereign and go back to flourishing. I want to visit. Like I keep saying, when this is all over and they've rebuilt, I want to go back with my kids and visit over and over, because I'll know that it's such a close part of me now, especially after this experience. Like I can never not take away the stuff that I've seen and learned and heard firsthand now. And so I appreciate it. Appreciate the time. I really hope people, even if this video makes it to a couple new people that really didn't understand or didn't know what's happening, now that they can get the firsthand experience, every little bit's going to help. So I'm just trying to do my part and the things that I get at.
Like I've said from the beginning, this YouTube channel, Selling the Stateline, is all about community and real estate and the people that make our area what it is, small businesses, and why we want to be in the Stateline area. And having this connection, this international connection through you, I felt it was only fair and it was only fitting. You and I have been working together for a long time now. We have a couple of other projects that are going to be coming to light shortly. So this video blog I'm trying to do, every couple of weeks or so, I felt the best one to do right after Easter, within the week after Easter, to promote your trip and just give a little awareness. Not a right spin or a left spin or a political spin on it, depending on where you get your news on it, but just the true people that are being affected. And I didn't even realize when I asked you to do this that there was this Wisconsin connection, which is like right in our backyard, that we could help. Now, George, I'm going to be a little, I'm going to be a little more open here with this, but besides donorbox.org, Wisconsin-Ukrainians, and the link is going to be in the chat box underneath this video on YouTube and then wherever we promote it. If somebody wants to help, is there a GoFundMe? Is there something else that could go on, or should we just direct our efforts to the couple of places that you feel are the best?
I think that is so. If you want to make a difference with humanitarian, I think by far the best that's delivered, I think over 9 million meals so far, is World Central Kitchen. So if you really want to focus on humanitarian effort and helping those people that are displaced and refugees, I would strongly recommend donating to World Central Kitchen. If you want to help the efforts that are into the country deeper, the war Uber type, where they're supplying, yes, they're supplying some, safety and are they're not supplying weapons, they're not supplying arms, they're not supplying bullets. It's illegal for a non-for-profit to do these things. So they're not supplying the tools to kill or hurt. They're supplying the tools to defend, to protect, to feed, and to help those that are injured with medicine and bandages.
To bring in bandages, beds, medicine, food.
Yes. Yes. Directly to the affected in the country. So that would be this, and it's not a GoFundMe that's through this DonorMe, but it's the same thing. They've chosen specifically because it's a better, they're all about like maximizing the impact and making sure that as much of every dollar donated goes to the help and not to fees and unnecessary bureaucracy and profits. They're negotiating wholesale deals, like I said, and those are the things that they're really kicking butt on, and it's just impressive. So those would be my two, World Central Kitchen for humanitarian efforts, and to the other one, to the Wisconsin Ukrainians group, the non-for-profit for.
The last shameless plug. If somebody's moved by your story and they're like, that's the guy I want to work with to help me buy a house, how do they get a hold of you, George?
homewithgeorge.com.
homewithgeorge.com. All right, George Pleshkewych, thank you very much for being here today. I appreciate all that you've done. I appreciate your friendship, and I appreciate just your passion for helping people. I mean, it totally transpires in everything that you do. So thank you again for being here and sharing your story and a bit of what you went through in the last week with the world. Totally appreciate it, brother. Thank you.
All right. Have a good one.
All right. And as always, please subscribe to our channel at Selling the Stateline. Subscribe button's right there at the bottom. And you can always visit at buywithbroda.com. Thank you very much for watching, everyone.